What is the significance of insignificance in the science fiction genre? When you think about science fiction, people usually associate the genre with inventions, aliens, annoying aliens, technology, robots, and most likely, space. But something that people don't really bring up in science fiction is another important factor: importance, or the lack thereof. In space, you can be all alone, you can debate and argue whether any of this is worth it. When you look back to a planet, you can see how small you are in a world full of billions of others like you. When you live in a world full of robots taken over or not, you can wonder if humans have any value or purpose, or if the free labor of metal is all that matters. All of these thoughts a person or something has can make an individual feel small in the grand scheme of things, but in many movies or games, the main character will fight against that feeling. Marcus will fight for the robots to be free. Orion Pax will try to show that the miners can be just as strong as the robots. That one guy will stand against the corporation to prove that they Wait a second. And Gary King will stand against an intergalactic threat. There's different ways of showing insignificance, and because of this, many movies or games, whether it isn't very obvious or significant to the piece itself, will have characters reflect on their worth and show their resistance to it. Here, I have brought together 3 games that I believe have this idea of an insignificant base story and utilizes it the most, and I'll be going through how exactly they show their resistance to it, and if at all, it is possible to fight for one's worth. Harold Halibut. This guy. Harold Halibut, the game named after this guy, our protagonist, was in development for 14 years. And when you look at the game, you can kind of see why. Being made with stop motion. But we're not focusing on the development of the game.
Oh, I see.
The game of Harold is a philosophical ride for 10 hours about what and where home is, who we are, our value in this world, and in Harold's case, the lack thereof. Harold lives on a ship called the Fedora, a ship that was launched at the height of the Cold War by the Westerners about 200 years ago, with the inhabitants of the ship assuming that all life on Earth had ceased after they launched. That ship, the one we walk on now, crashed into a water planet, leaving it stranded and without any means of relaunching due to the damages made during the crash, which, by the end of the game, happened around 50 years ago. Harold is just a space baby.
Stubborn as a mule.
What's a mule?
Oh, don't you start, Harold.
He has never seen Earth or space or even real-life animals until the end. Just fish, fish, and longfish. What does this have to do with insignificance? Well, let me bring you to my graph over here. I call it graphite. There are around
22
side characters we meet throughout the story. All of them have different jobs, beliefs, and feelings about society. The farther the person is from the center, the closer to these specific meanings they are, and the more at home and useful they feel. For example, the scientists on board who love researching and learning more about biology fits really well to the planet's environment. They have meaning and use, and despite a few scenes of them complaining or being sad, they are content with this. All the scientists fit in this category. Politically wise, there are many politicians, leaders, and enforcers of laws who find themselves at home here. They relish in finding and maintaining order, ruling over a small population and, excluding some instances, want what's best for the people. Most of these people fit under the political banner, except for 4 people, the quadruplets. Culturally speaking, there's a huge variety of people on this ship, but that would mean nothing if there's bigotry or non-acceptance on the ship like there is on Earth. But here, everyone is allowed to be who they want to be. There's a group of very liberal and revolutionary kids who are allowed to learn about
Cartesian dualism or move straight into Neoplatonism.
that. The school teacher is very happy with his job. Most if not all the shopkeepers are too, even if they are out for blood for one another. The pinnacle of all this is with Rafi, who is implied to be queer throughout the entire game, and is able to, mostly, find the enjoyment of quiet on the ship. And with their technology, only stunted by the kids at the arcade and not being called the master of.
Not a word about this to anyone.
Oh, shiver my timbers!
What does this have to do with insignificance? Well, what do you notice about Graphite the Graph? Harold is missing. He doesn't stand in any of these categories, even with his attempts to do so.
Possible comet fragment? Judging by the composition, could have been from far away.
He isn't a leader, he isn't a scientist, he barely has any social connections. He's just Harold. He cleans filters and runs around doing errands for everyone else, and you could argue that this is something somebody has to do for the ship. But no, this is an irregularity.
It'd be madness. People running around fetching stuff by hand, none of us would get anything done.
Yeah, my bad. I'll go get it from the shelf.
Although, while you're here,
Thanks, Bridget. Sorry to bother you. Bye.
Sometimes the task Harold is asked to do gets done without him, so what was even the point, Cyrus? If Harold was on this graph, he'd be straight in the middle, because despite being 20 to 30 years old, he seemed to just be a cog in the machine, rather than being able to reap the benefits of that machine. There's a point where the captain of the ship sinks to Harold's level, but he was able to pull himself back up. Mostly because his father was a captain, which made him a captain, automatically giving him purpose. Napoleon would be pissed if he was on the ship. His options are limited. Only 3 ways to go. A huge wall to climb. If he doesn't fit with any of those categories, there's nothing left but the pipes. And he has no choice. He never chose this. Remember that the mission to leave Earth happened 200 years ago. The ship crashed in the water 50 years ago. There's nothing past these 3 options because of where he lives. But you could argue this doesn't matter since they have to live like this since Earth was destroyed.
To the Fedora. Well, we just wanted to let you know that we pulled together down here. The sparrows calmed down and things pretty much worked themselves out.
All of this, the uselessness of the ship's original mission, the situation of Harold's own uselessness, swells up and finally almost makes Harold completely break down.
Everyone treats me like I'm just daydreaming. I mean, what else am I supposed to do when I was born onto a spaceship? The same one I'll die on, with no options. A mission that is probably pointless, decided on by people I never knew before I was born, who could have spent the money and energy on staying and helping instead, who probably made half the problems on Earth, who made my parents, who... Gah!
I'm angry too! Gah!
But there is something that can be done. This is Wee Woo.
Hello all. Sorry I'm late.
We were just recapping everything we know.
Everything? Won't that take a while?
Harold and Wee Woo meet by accident, with the latter getting too close to the ship and then getting stuck in the filters where Harold meets them. This relationship is where the bulk of the game's story and meaning comes from. There's a lot of other side stories, including the twins, the previously mentioned captain, the time theft, the lightkeepers, the mailman's adventure, and most importantly,
Coco!
We learn later that Wee Woo's home, a cave under the ocean, holds an energy source powerful enough to help the Fedora relaunch into space and continue its adventure, and to find where in the cave this source is, Harold is sent in. Here, while he's getting high, he discovers 2 important things about the cave. 1. The cave and the people inside said cave are all self-sufficient without any advanced technology and are willing to help one another without a second thought. And 2. The hierarchy in this cave is not the same as the one on the Fedora. While the Fedora's hierarchy looks like this, the cave's looks like this. The reason for this is because these people don't really have an incentive to advance from their primordial situation. The cave is as close to a representation of a nonchalant life on Earth than the Fedora is, one where importance isn't just 3 paths. And because of this, when Harold comes into the cave from Insignificance in the Fedora, he rises on the hierarchy. He only stays there for about an hour or 2 in our eyes, but it's enough to send him through rippling changes. He realizes that here he matters, because there is no pure significance required here. Other than to give supplies, people wander the cave and talk and live happily, mostly through bliss, since there's not any advanced problem in the cave, unlike in the ship where many things need to be done to keep it running. The insignificance that once haunted him throughout the entire ship, his entire life for years, is finally gone. This changes him forever.
Jeanne, I'm not coming.
Okay. It's only natural you're emotional. I suppose I can finish things up by myself.
No, Professor, I'm staying with Wii U.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Can you understand?
Harold, I've grown terribly fond of you. But if I've learned anything about you, it's that you always defy expectations one way or another.
So, you're not angry?
Angry? Dear boy, I'm delighted. I will miss you like I miss my left hand. But if you finally found something you feel strongly enough to shout Jeanne at me, then I'm happy for you.
Thank you. I'm gonna miss you too, Moreau. You've always been there for me.
In the end, when the Fedora is finally able to leave the planet and begin another 100-year journey through the stars, Harold decides to stay. to stay in the place that he finally deems to be home, a place where he finally feels happy in, where his head is finally clear. Earlier, another character who Harold is fond of dies on the ship, one of the oldest characters around, and this may be another reason why Harold decides to stay here, afraid to die searching for comfort when he has already found it here. The science fiction here, even if I don't make it seem so, plays a big part in the insignificance feeling here, mainly with the scientists and the importance Harold has with the fedora, though it is possible that the lack of science makes significance return. Simplicity. Okay, time to go to the extreme now. Have you heard of H.R. Giger, the guy that made those cool alien designs in the creatively named Alien movie? Well, some guy in Ebb Software had just watched that movie before a company meeting and decided to make a fucked up game in a world based around this guy's designs. Okay, but there are other elements and ideas at play here, like the connection between technology and humanity, plain ascension through sex and pain, and overall it's a pretty cool futuristic dystopian type story, though the utopia here is... Now you may be asking, why exactly does this game belong in this video? It's the name. The name literally means worthlessness. You play as two different characters. The first one through a factory of mold men before getting covered in some mysterious liquid, and the second being hijacked by the first after they had gotten mutated by that liquid, helping us through the facility and temporarily making sure to regain their grip on us again. There is no dialogue in the game. All that we are provided with are grunts and cries. When encountering another character that isn't whatever we are, they are either hostile and attempting to take our life, or they are in misery and pain, dying on the spot or trying their best to survive for the moment that they are alive. There isn't any written language that we can decipher in this game either. The higher-ups that rule this place has seemingly all left. Luckily, the game came with an art book providing lore to the world, and it does not waste any ink. Both of our main characters are born without help, fully grown as adults with no experience in the world, barely functioning bodies, inside what is called the wall. We can't really see what exactly is in this wall, and the vertical birthing machine isn't explained by the developers, so we can only guess at what this is. And so we walk away from the bleeding wall and into the field. It seems as though the planet itself, if this universe even has a concept of space, is giving its own blood for life, like lava in the center of our world. This place has, instead, blood, a sacrifice of the planet to its people, even though it's unaware of the consequences that fall behind. Oh, I'm sorry. This is on Earth? What kind of crazy-ass future? Beneath these planes is the assembly. A place that the book literally describes as a sausage factory. Living, breathing things down here that have consciousness are crushed and sent off to wherever. The walls and designs of this place mimic our own body. And right at this moment is where the player, us included, may be able to make a pretty accurate statement. Conscious beings are used as building blocks and fuel in this world. Examining the walls, we can see that these structures may have been built from human bones. The tools and machinery that allow us to access doors are made from blood veins and other soft tissue. A type of fuel we see later on is very white and seemingly sticky, so you can assume what that is. And this is where the word scorn comes into play. Worthlessness. Moldman, the main building block it seems, comes from a similar looking cocoon that we ourselves are born from. Just more manufactured and probably doesn't provide as much structure as regular human bones would. What the hell is that sentence? Other people are born in proper incubators above us, in areas that make it seem like they won't be used as fuel, meaning that we are on the same level as a pig born on a farm. We are born the same as one another, like nothing, with nothing. Next is the crater. Basically around and at the bottom of that tower thing that stretches higher than anything else. And here we see why most of this place is empty and abandoned. Slowly, as we continue deeper into what seemed to have been a mini-society, we see parasite-like creatures around, their organs and bodies stretched around the entire facility. How'd they get here? 3 options. War, which is mentioned in the book, though cut in the final game, diseases from the moldmen, or because of the blood experiments that you'll see soon happen above us. If you were to remove the infections that have found their way here, you could argue this place is heavenly, somewhere that people of worth would work, whatever the job was. I know you can't see, but please stop staring at me. Even here, where the species that we are, humans, are supposed to feel supreme in the absence of whatever rulers used to be here, we are dragged down again by these creatures. We aren't even supposed to be alive. We were supposed to be dead hours ago, alongside the maid that have tried to crawl their way here. The definition of scorn constantly looks us in the face and taunts us. Every step we take, every time we try to acclimate ourselves to this world, pain is there to greet us. Yet our character continues on. There's an idea that society that once resided here thought that pain was a way to open the conscious mind. But why would we care? We're just trying to survive, to prove that we should be allowed to live. We take the weapons that have been left here and show that we have the capabilities of fighting, defending ourselves. We try to avoid the traps of pain that these masochists set here long before, only to be forced to endure the pain in order to continue forward. We continue to fight against the idea that we are nothing. We're an infant just trying to survive. We want to live. Who wouldn't after being born? Who would just accept the scorn, the insignificance that's given to us on the spot? In Harold Halibut, Harold had gladly accepted it until the time came to break free of what human societies wanted him to be. Here, we're going to have to be the ones to walk to our own meaning. But while you're doing that, I've got some spring cleaning I have to do. After peacefully moving past the queen, we arrive at the closest place to peace there is now. Polis. Sharing a name with a philosophical Greek city-state, even now, even when we're supposed to be where the nobility of this world lives, where those deemed protectable and unspoiled were supposed to be, we find that horrors wait in the form of people's views of elevation to a new life. There are many statues depicting sex, others questioning the worth of organs, and the two combined appear to question what it is to be, to pleasure, to hurt. Even one of the murals replicates a medical sign that we see now today in hospitals. Throughout the castle-like world and through the book, it is safe to assume that these people thought the spirit, the mind, and what fuels it to be more important than the body itself. We're given the chance to bring our body through some sort of portal, no doubt the same portal that these creatures, these delusional monsters disguised as humans had gone through, possibly a land of perfection and happiness. But we aren't able to get to this promised land. The parasite that had been strung to our back prevents us from leaving. Their devotion to wanting to stay alive or feel the blood and body of another pushes them to fuse with us. We aren't able to escape from our insignificance, no matter how much we have tried. We push through the pains of each layer that this society built before us, gaining new ways to continue our survival, our physical resistance to this idea that we are nothing but scorn. But even in the face of death and destruction, with almost no hope of getting out, going further down a rabbit hole of pain, we still take the weapons of those before, use the inventions and keys of people who once lived here, and we fight. We fight like hell to survive. And even if it didn't happen, we fought to try and live. Aw man, that citizen is a sleeper. Finally! A normal game! Citizen Sleeper was made by just a single person, taking them 2 years to make. The game reflects Harold Halibut and the questions asked here, like who we are, what meaning we bring to where we live, and if life is worth living, and to what extent. There are 3 characters that show their resistance against insignificance in this game, so let's talk about them. Starting with the main character, the Sleeper. Sleepers in this game refers to a type of people who appear to be robots. White skin, sans like jawline, and the ability to interface, basically the space equivalent of the internet. These people are corporate property, used in manual labor. An individual agrees to let their consciousness be used in a different body, leaving it in the hands of essence art, which then gets emulated into shells. The soul remains in the original human body, which rests in a cryo chamber, while the consciousness, and sometimes a few memories, are put into a robot meant to just be a worker with no rights. The sleeper is who we are, born just to work off a contract that technically we didn't sign. It'd be like if you were drunk and then signed some deal and then you had to wake up and all of a sudden you're legally obligated to receive 5 kicks in the balls every day. We are constantly treated like nothing, given limitations to our ability to live, like with the planned obsolescence, which basically makes it so that we must constantly be injected with a stabilizer. If we don't, we simply just crumble away, our systems failing one by one. This leads us to wanting to escape this life. Us and many other sleepers escape on some cargo boxes which are shipped to the Eye. The station holds 2 main factions, Havage and Yatagan. Havage being the Chaos Child of Solheim, which collapsed years ago, which also caused the collapse of XPR, but most of Solheim's assets were bought by Senatstat, which by the end of the game laid claim to the Eye, but Conway, which worked with Solheim and one of their executives, James Harden, also laid claim to the station and had previously tried to buy and sell the Eye. Also, SNR was basically trying to control Yatagan by making one of their leaders, Yannick, basically a robot. Try to keep up. While we use our interface, basically making us a ghost, we discover a bunch of different AIs, 2 of them being important to the story, Navigator and Gardener. Some people, including SNR, don't see us as a living thing, just an emulation of a person, a corporate loophole. Navigator, an AI we meet and help fight a rogue AI, tells us, if we choose to spare that AI, I think I am thinking, therefore I am thinking. We're also told that sentient AIs are also illegal in this world. This definition to identify sentience with AI should apply to us, since sentience is not legal in non-human objects and we actively think throughout the entire game. Or at least we think that we are thinking. SNARP is basically saying that we cannot think for ourselves. Anything that we do think is basically just a programming set out beforehand from our previous self's brain, which is another way of saying you are not a thinking, living, breathing thing, just a working machine that isn't considered alive. Near the beginning of the game, we also encounter one of the main hostile characters in the game, Ethan. He arrives under the hand of SNRP and forces you to entertain him by paying his tab at the end of the drinking cycle. He constantly throws negative remarks at you, belittling you and constantly physically harassing you whenever he gets a chance to. He even refers to another human as one of his own. This type of attitude is shown to us again and again by people on the Eye, whether it be the smallest of reactions or one with malicious intent. Castro is another character that uses you for their own benefit. He constantly says that he is a neutral standing party and that he sees us the same as any other person. But the moment he finds an opening, he attempts to take control of our body and halt us from doing our activities. He later tries to regain our trust again, but by that point, our sleeper already has his gaslighting tricks figured out. The third character that sees us in a negative light and wants to use us for their own needs is Anthica, a mercenary that gets betrayed by a crew member, Ashton. Anthica acts as if we are a friend at first, although it turns out Ashton had abandoned her on the Eye because he found another sleeper, the only one alive on the station. The two have a standoff, with her holding the sleeper's brain wires in her hands, threatening death. Ashton knows that if he had told her about the sleeper and the life-threatening condition that they were in, she would have refused to help, and would have just left them for dead. The realization also hits us like a brick, that we were being used the entire time, since she had only seen us as a bargaining tool or a wrench to be used. She treated the other sleeper like nothing. Ashton reveals her feelings about sleepers, and she later confirms those feelings and apologizes. These 3 people, whether it be from somebody we are supposed to hate at the beginning, or someone that stabs us in the back in the end, creates the question of if living in this body is worth it. Later we discover the Gardener. We are given the choice whether or not to stay in our body, or to become a part of a kind of hive mind-like world. The descriptions given here question why and how the sleeper has been able to get this far. They are in constant pain, their body constantly decays every day, requiring attention. They are constantly seen as the low of the low in the society, just a servant ready to be ordered around or some property that needs to be returned to their rightful owners. Dragos, the first character we meet, tells us in one of our first ever interactions since escaping SNRP that we are not expected to survive. With the descriptions given to us, the memories laid out on the spot, it seems as if the best choice would be to live in bliss, to let our body die, just to live in the world away from anything human, since we are nothing but scrap. But there's another feeling that resonates here. A character squeezes our hand, constantly talks to us, making sure that we are going through this experience okay, and then more memories flood in, from people all over the Eye who we have helped, or who have helped us. There were a few that hadn't seen us as equals at first. Fang most likely saw us as a tool to bring down Harden. Drago sees us as another sleeper that will come and go. and Mina is afraid of what we are at first. But the three slowly begin to work towards trusting us, and then respecting us. We help Fang bring down a man that had been a part of the Eye since Solheim's collapse, and he puts himself at risk to do so, putting his life in the Sleeper's hands. Dragos understands that we are going to be around much longer than he expected, and he tries to make sure that we know the threats that are coming at us. Emina grows her trust with us as we help babysit her, and assist her father in getting work on a colony ship, enough so that we are fine with her calling us a robot. Oh, piece of shit! We're also welcomed with open arms to everyone else we meet. Most don't question us as a sleeper, some defend us from bigots, some try to relate our own pains, and some will just chill with us. We're constantly hugging, laughing, and sharing memories, helping people as much as possible, and in return, gaining friends and family. In this choice we're given with the gardener, we're told of the constant pains, the reminders of insignificance we are given in our waking moment, just a machine to work. Yet, we're also given these memories of happiness and acceptance and normality throughout the entire ship. We resist faulting, to give up and accept bliss and nothing else. We understand that we are in pain, that we're sometimes not happy, but that is life. And the point of life is resisting against that little voice telling you to quit. That is our sleeper, knowing that he is a citizen of this world. So that was the first example. What about the other two? Well, Emphas is the second, a food vendor that tells and receives stories for food. He was given implants by Conway, an anchored interface rig, to help him basically be in a strong suit to help him move things around. Yet after he got the implants installed all throughout his body, they were made useless after the company that installed them discontinued the suits due to how dangerous they were. They were thrown to the streets like dogs to find their own path through life. Emphas was able to find that joy with cooking, replicating precise movements that a huge machine would require in order to perfectly make foods for the public to enjoy. He seems happy with this life, even when he is in constant pain from the implants. That should seem like enough examples, right? Two people who are able to fight against the insignificance with something else? Well, there's a third example that turns the idea of resistance upside down. Peter. Peter is a DLC character, arriving on refugee ships that fled from 3 different moons, Hearth Step, Song, and Heart. Peter and his singers are from the Song Moon, the first one that had been terraformed and the one to receive the worst results and treatment from the rest of the moons. He says that most of the planets constantly needed things from Song, yet they weren't treated with the same respect. These people were basically seen as those who survived without living. Everyone requiring to be a mechanical engineer in order to keep systems running, and they couldn't leave due to being the backbone of the rest of the moons. People would be able to live more comfortably on farms in the other worlds, places where people didn't have to try to worry about their lives being cut short in a matter of seconds. This fuel and hatred of being nothing, being worth nothing to the rest of the refugees finally boils over when the 3 worlds are forced to flee, or at least evacuate as many people as the ships available could take. Even now, turned away from their home world, Peter still receives orders and commands from Sol. The resistance finally beginning at the Eye. Too much history, too much bad blood, and treatment is shared between them all, leaving Peter to abandon the rest of the refugee ships and flee away to another planet. These 3, one fueled by the love of those around, the other fueled by the love of foods and interactions of people all around, and the third, fueled by the constant hate of those who have mistreated his people for whoever knows how long, all show different ways they have suffered and are fighting against it. Have you noticed something interesting about these games? Other than the fact that they are visually and conceptually unique, they are all developed by different countries, all having the same idea but typed out in different languages. Harold Halbert constantly makes you run around, back and forth through the same hallways to make you feel trapped, doing the same thing every day with no change and making you question if there is anything else to life. Scorn makes everything feel miserable. The game is not fun to play and everything is disgusting. You're constantly in pain every step of the way. And Citizen Sleeper has you go every day with the fear of death looming above you, forcing you to constantly fight for survival and ask if it will be worth it in the end, or if the bliss of emptiness would be sweeter. Am I supposed to be making these games sound fun? Whether in English, Serbian, or German, the idea of being nothing is carried across all those language barriers, and their resistance to it. Whether or not it is successful, it is something you can always see. In that moment you pick up a gun, where you heal yourself, where you shout defiantly to another, is all it takes to make you live, to resist. Oh, and if you were wondering, 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, Insignificance isn't really fun.